You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former State Senator Scott Howell and former Speaker of the House Greg Hughes. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invite.
Good to be here.
Let's start off with vaccine mandates and employment. We saw some really high-profile cases play out during the week. A number of coaches on the Washington State coaching staff, including the head coach, walked off the job. An ESPN reporter leaving the job. We're seeing it at police departments across the country. Greg, let's start with you. What do you make of what's happening?
I think we better pay attention to it because these are high-profile examples of what I think is happening across this country and will continue to have happen, and it's scary. I mean, if your healthcare providers, if you have 15 to 25% of your healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, who instead of adhering to a mandate, a medical mandate, would prefer to not work there, you're going to see that. You saw it with the Southwest Airlines. People can think that was weather-related, but you're seeing that Southwest, as a company now, is petitioning the courts to see if they have to go through with the mandate of vaccinations. It's a human nature that if you're consulting with a physician and you feel good about the decisions you're making, that's one thing. But if you're mandated and these threats continue to rise in severity, it does inherently cause hesitancy. And I got to tell you, I don't think that I think our medical privacy is incredibly important. I think that this can open a door to other worrisome issues of what people can do or how people have access to your medical history. So good for those that are standing up and being counted and saying we're not going to go through with this, because I think that this could become a bigger issue if they didn't do it.
Scott, your thoughts on what we're seeing play out across the country?
Well, Greg brings up some really good points, and it's an interesting argument to me. For me, it's pretty simple. The science, the doctors all say that the vaccination could end COVID-19. And I agree with Greg about the personnel records. That's why we have the HIPAA law, actually. That's why it came about. But I also believe that it's such a simple solution. And if there was dramatic data about the inefficiency of the vaccination, I would say then we ought to question it. But it is an emotional thing. We have family members who have perpetuated all sorts of rumors about the vaccination. None of it has been proven true. And I think on the Washington State and that football coach, that guy's given up $6.5 million. I'm telling you, somebody could poke me in the eye and I'd still want to stay on the coaching staff. Plus 5 or 6 assistants left too. They exited. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you do that? You know, if there was something about the vaccination that we didn't know, that's fine. But since it has been proven, let's go get vaccinated and end COVID-19.
Address that, Greg.
Yeah.
What's behind this? Because there is plenty of data if you want to go look at it. Billions of people across the world have taken the vaccine. What is it that gets to this point?
I think that because of what was just brought up, we have to look broader. I know that there are people that are arguing that they don't want to have to produce proof of vaccination, proof of this medical procedure, even when they've been vaccinated. There's a larger issue going on here about medical privacy.
Real quick, I just want to ask you, is that what this is all about, though, just medical privacy, or is there a large portion of the population that's buying into ridiculous conspiracy theories?
So I would be careful to say anything's ridiculous in terms of how people decide whether they take the vaccine or not. I mean, I do believe that it's very rare that there are side effects, but certainly they exist. But the ability to make those decisions for yourself, and whatever those consequences may be, that's how we've done it. We've not mandated that newborns have to be vaccinated, but the take-up rate is incredibly high, in the upward of the 90 percentile. Something's going on in this country where, under the banner of COVID-19 and this specific vaccination, there are requirements for employment. There's deductions from your paycheck of up to $200 if you're being tested instead of being vaccinated, that impact people's lives and their household income. It's getting broader than just the vaccine by itself. And what's so sad is if I think you treated people like adults and you gave them good information, and you certainly had it coming from sources like a physician instead of your government, I think that you would see a different reaction. I think Delta Airlines is a great example. They've mandated nothing. They've allowed for religious exemptions and medical exemptions, and they are reporting a take-up rate of vaccination of well over 90%. And they see those numbers go up. But it's how they've approached it, and I think that when you see this recoil, It's because of how heavy-handed this is, and I think it opens the door. This issue has opened people's eyes to the fact of what could be next and what would be next.
Okay,
And it's worrisome.
Real quick, Scott, before we get into that, we've seen, you know, when you talk about the exemptions, we see that at our local universities here in the state of Utah as well. And back to my comment on conspiracy theories. I stand by that some of them are ridiculous, but you make a point. There are documented troubles that some people have had with the vaccine.
But that's so minimal
Scott,
when we that's so minimal when we look at that.
Right.
And
Scott, weigh in.
Okay. Well, hats off to Angela Dunn and Salt Lake County Health. They're now offering incentives up to $700 a family can make by going out and getting vaccinated. I think to Greg's point about individual freedom and making that choice, the incentives that I think are going to, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the county. But that was just approved last night at the Salt Lake County Council meeting. And I think that's probably a combination of both. But, you know, that personal freedom and privacy, that's really important for everyone. I just think that it's kind of, and Greg won't like this, but it's kind of a silly argument that let's just go get it. And if there were a portion of 20% or 10% or even 5% across the world that there was an adverse effect to the vaccination, I'd say don't do it. I can tell you, Linda and I have been vaccinated and we got our boosters on the first day. And look at me. Well, maybe I'm not normal.
All right.
I think you
honestly,
made my case.
I would love to stay on this and get into it more, but I want to get on one other topic real quick. During the week, a couple state lawmakers going before the House Judiciary Committee to call for an audit of the 2020 election, similar to what we saw in Arizona. Greg, is that necessary?
I think so. Look, some institutional memory is, I think, required here. When we as a state moved from just paper ballots, this is back after the 2000 election, the Bush versus Gore election, where instead of having the paper ballots and the hanging chads, we went to an electronic vote. I was part of a committee that looked at electronic voting machines and what would bring the greatest level of confidence so that people felt that their vote would count. When you vote by electronic machine, you'll see a piece of paper that will roll up to the side, and you will see a paper trail of the way you voted electronically on that piece of paper. And it was imagined, it was actually assumed back then, that there would be a regular audit to make sure that the accuracy was there and that it was that quality assurance that the paper ballots that people see when they vote matched up with the final tally. So auditing ballots and making sure that your chain of custody is strong and that you can be confident in the system you're using is not new to 2020. I know we've talked about it a lot, but it shouldn't be thought of as controversial or wrong to audit your results. We should do that and look, for Utah, Trump won. The Republicans won 2 seats in the Salt Lake County Council.
Yeah, it was a very good night for the Republican Party in 2020.
So you can't say Republicans don't like the results, so they want to audit. You can't use that excuse. No one argues the outcome, but you would like to know that the chain of custody was real, that the votes that people cast legally were counted, and if there are problems, we can at least answer the question that there were not problems, or if there are, we can discover what those would be and make that system better. That shouldn't be controversial.
Scott, do we need to audit the 2020 election in Utah?
Yeah, because Biden would get more votes. I mean, it's just kind of that simple. No, we don't need to do that. That's another thing that's just silliness. These representatives went down to Arizona. The representative was on the Steve Bannon show talking about how there's conspiracy of Utah. I've known Ricky Hetch forever, Sherry Swinson. These are people who understand this. Now, do I think that it's important to be accountable? Yeah, I do. But to go back and do a forensic accounting on that is crazy. Yesterday, Linda and I got our ballots. We filled them out. And I was thinking how great it was that we could fill out our ballots, put them in the mail, because on November 3rd, we're not going to be here. We're going to be gone. And so what a convenient thing to be able to participate in democracy utilizing technology. And Greg makes a good point about technology. When I was at IBM, we almost entered into this space, but we were very careful because we did not want to be subject to the conspiracy theories, the what ifs and all of that. And our technology was great. But Dominion, they've been certified. They keep being certified. In Arizona, they came out and said there was no fraud. And I can't believe that people still think that there was fraud down there. And so, NIMSA, it's just puzzling to me.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, gentlemen. It goes by just like that. But great thoughts, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.